Hi, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Android. I am your host, Ashley Esqueva. And, Jeff, you're back.
I am back.
You're back from Oregon.
Yep, it was nice.
I missed you a little bit.
It was actually sunnier there than it was here.
Was it? Yeah, it was really cold earlier this week.
The Portland/Seattle area.
Yeah, you took the sunshine
I know, I'm sorry
away
about
from
that.
us.
Apologize.
But now you're back, and that's good. And we also have a special guest co-host, Michael Ludden. I have to tell everybody how I feel like I discovered Michael because Michael sent me something on Twitter and it was really funny, and I thought he was very knowledgeable.
More awkward than funny, but
yeah, it was a little bit, okay, it was totally awkward, but it was like a little bit funny and I was amused. So then I got a hold of him and asked if he wanted to come in and sit with us. So thanks for coming today.
Yes.
I'm glad you could. I'm glad you made it out of court in time. I know, yeah, and he's got a G1, so he's like an original Android adopter.
Old school.
Yeah, seriously old school. I'm impressed.
I was in court. Let's not talk about that. This isn't a show about that.
Well, let's just get right down to the news. Because we got a lot to talk about. So, a lot of stuff happened in the last 48 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Google I/O basically came to town and destroyed everything and everyone in its path. Yeah, exactly. See, by the way, somebody asked if you found a time machine for that G1.
Thank you.
So Google comes to town for I/O and now officially announces Froyo. So, and they actually announced a target date for Gingerbread. So we're even getting ahead of ourselves here.
It's exciting.
So let's, I want to just say, if you didn't watch the Google keynote yesterday for Android, the specific Android keynote, I am pretty sure I burst into tears at the exact moment where they gave an Evo to every single attendee of I/O.
It was sort of like that part in Star Wars when they blow up the planet. Like
No!
thousands of voices screaming out at once.
No,
suddenly
exactly.
Silence.
No,
You just
it's
know the YouTube
the
crowd
million voices
yeah.
inside me.
Yeah.
We're screaming and we're suddenly silenced. I was just, yeah, exactly. Everybody noticed on Twitter, if you follow me on Twitter. I was slightly devastated, but after lots of Xanax and a bottle of wine last night, I'm okay. So, but anyway, there's too much to talk about for me to whine about this anymore. So let's talk Froyo.
Okay.
Speed increases. They announced the JIT compiler for apps and the V8 JavaScript engine. So basically, we're looking at it swimming laps around, and literally laps. When they showed the, they showed how fast it moves by this web app that has a little Android swimming in a square, and it literally swam laps around the iPad even. And we're looking at 2.5 to 5 times the current browsing performance.
I prefer when they put it 450% increase.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, what?
It makes it sound so much faster.
Yeah. And it makes me think, what's been wrong up until now that they can increase the speed that much? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's pretty sweet, especially for people with older hardware even, because they're going to see an increase. You don't have to buy a new phone to get this
you're
sweet
totally
speed increase.
old phone.
I'm
You
gonna
won't
have to
even need a new phone. It'll be 4 times
They're not
as
going to
fast.
release it on this.
Yeah, you're right.
They're going to need hackers
I
to
know.
do
I was
that.
going to say, you're going to have to hack that thing because I don't think it's going to see an official 2.2 upgrade. I think 1.5, 1.6 is the last of it for you.
It is. I need an Evo 4G.
Yeah, everybody does. Everyone
Yes,
needs an Evo.
in the world.
Of course, also, everybody knows support for Flash and Flash Air. We all knew it was coming, but for me, the question is will sites like Hulu support Flash?
No.
You don't think so?
Well, they said they won't. It was already blocked when people tried the site, like tried the live
Through
thing.
Skyfire.
Yeah.
But not
No.
through, because Skyfire had done Flashlight, and people were saying that it worked, and then all of a sudden it got blocked, and then it worked again, and then it got blocked.
I think I read on Engadget or something that they blocked Hulu when they were running the 2.2 on the Nexus. Sad. I don't know why they keep doing that.
That's interesting.
That is strange. I'm trying to think how they can do that. There's probably a way to spoof it.
There's got to be.
So
There's
Just
got to be
run a
ways
different
around
browser.
it.
Yeah,
Different
exactly.
browser or something.
Yeah,
Take the
there's got to be
browser.
ways around it, but I'm very curious as to how Hulu is going to respond to how Hulu is going to respond to Flash being on mobile phones.
Well, they're releasing a paid subscription service for the iPad, aren't they? Where you have to buy the app for $9.95 or something. I think they probably want to do that for every...
Oh, that would explain why they'd be blocking it.
Yeah.
So then it would be, it would work,
lame.
but you have to use the app.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
As long as it works, like, whatever.
Yeah, I guess so.
But so in addition to Flash, we also have this is one of my favorite things. I was a little bit skeptical at first, but push data over the cloud.
I don't get this.
Okay, so you're like,
I really have no idea.
So it was really cool to watch them. Like, for example, they'd pull up a set of directions in Google Maps on their laptop, and then there'd be a button in the Chrome browser that would send it over the cloud to your phone.
I have that button already, actually.
And it would instantly launch the navigation app in your phone and pull up that map.
I have that button. It's called email. I actually just email it to myself.
But
and
it's
then I
not
click
email.
It.
But it's not email.
I know.
But they're upgrading. It's an upgrade.
That's right. It's for lazy programmers.
Exactly.
Take that extra step.
Take all these extra steps. And then the other thing was that I really liked was finally there's going to be an update all option in the market.
Yes,
which
is awesome.
That is awesome. It's dumb they didn't have that before.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not going to say it's awesome. I'm going to say about time. Like that's, I'm kind of offended that we haven't had that since the beginning. It's just silly. And then, you know, you're going to be able to load apps on SD cards or move them to SD cards, which is a good thing.
Which I actually already do, and actually they're following a lot of what the hackers have already done with the apps to SD card stuff, the tethering, which we'll get into later, and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, the tethering. I mean, you brought that up just now, and I mean, now they're doing automatic integrated tethering and integrated hotspots. Unfortunately, we're probably still going to be dealing with carriers regulating and charging for its use, but I'm sure you and you both know that hackers are going to easily.
I'm not going to say that for the last year and a half I've been using T-Mobile 3G for free on my computer. I'm not going to say that, but it's possible. I will say that
You're
it's
like,
possible.
That's why I was in court today. No. But and then the other thing that they announced that's sort of new is the way that they're integrating ads into mobile space. And we don't really talk a lot about ads here. Like, I mean, I know we talked about iAd when they announced it, but basically their mobile advertising integrates AdMob, $30 fee for Evo. I don't even know what that means.
For the hotspot thing.
Oh yeah, for the hotspot. I mean, if you hack around it, yeah, I'm sure. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah, I don't know how it's
if I
going
was
to
in
work
a 4G city, I think I would want to work around that. But I'm not, so not yet anyway.
You could be in breach of contract though. You like void your warranty. They could arrest you,
like,
whatever.
Remotely brick your phone or something. It'd freak me out. So their mobile advertising is pretty cool. They had some simple rotating ads that just sort of very inobtrusive, like they are in Gmail. But then they also had these apps that you could kind of pull down a shade, and then it would open up to a full ad. I mean, it would be either it could be a movie, it could be anything. And so it's not necessarily the sort of appy sort of ads that iAd has, which I don't personally, for me, like I don't have time to sit there and like play around with like games inside an ad. So I thought it was I agree. Nuno Maya said a very elegant solution. I agree. I think it was a very elegant solution, and also all of this happens without closing or a lot of times even obscuring the app that you're using. So you don't have to leave, and it also is open. Google put its money where its mouth was and said, we're going to let this, this ad system work across all mobile ad networks that developers might choose to use. So I think that that's something that you never see somebody like Apple do, obviously. But then on top of that, I think there's so many opportunities for advertising, which is really, really cool.
And AdMob, their deal cleared today, the FCC, finally.
I know, and they finally got that cleared. I mean, I was a little nervous about that, to be honest. They're like, we're going to investigate this for antitrust. Yeah, they do get first dibs, and I will fully admit that. They do get first dibs on ads and things, but I mean, if some developer really decided within an app that they didn't want to necessarily use AdMob, that they could, but I really enjoyed, like, for example, when he said, okay, look up beaches in wallpapers. And he typed in beaches, and the ads on the top were, like, for travel sites. They were for hotels and things like that. And there's other ads that have, like, phone signs next to them where you click on them and it'll call that different ad server or that different travel provider and all that stuff.
Makes
really,
me nervous
really cool.
though about like misclicks. Like what if I, click in the wrong place and then I'm calling somebody?
And
like,
you've all of a sudden signed up for DirecTV or something. You're like, oh God,
one
no.
click, no.
So, and the last thing that they announced during the Android keynote was gingerbread. So, not only did they like fully announce support for Froyo, we've already within the span of an hour have moved on to gingerbread. Yep. So everyone's phones immediately became instantly not obsolete, but instantly not innovative and cutting edge. So my favorite part of the presentation, slated for fourth quarter, coming in December. Fingers crossed. I mean, development soon is obviously subject to change, but this is, I think this means that within 6 months, I think this means that we're finally starting to see, like we talked about, the stabilization of the sort of
the release schedule.
Constant releasing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of Linux distributions do 6-month cycles. They release a new version every 6 months. And for something that you're constantly innovating on, it makes sense to just set a date and then release whatever you have that's stable at that date. Because otherwise, it's like, it's just arbitrary where your actual versions are.
Yeah.
So.
Now I will say with the Evo, it came with 2.1, not 2.2, which shocked me last week. But then also on top of that, like how long is it going to take for Sense UI to get that 2.2? They're saying it will be second half of 2010 that everyone starts seeing 2.2, which will be in weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty
soon. July 1st. So
I somehow doubt it because Sprint's whole business model is based on charging you like $30 for the hotspot app, and if you just have a little thing to click for tethering, then how's that gonna work?
But on a system like when I had my pre, like they have tethering for Verizon. They have tethering for Verizon that is available. Yeah. Like it's an instant tethering app,
and it's free, right?
But you don't have that on Sprint. That's not an option to download.
Plus, I think like they're just trying to sell Palm Pres right now, so they're like tether with it.
I don't even. They're free now.
They are.
I think.
They're like 2 for free. Just sign up.
Well, on Verizon, they're buy one get one. Yeah, but not like for 8 devices, right? Exactly.
That's true. That's true.
And but yeah, so here's the cool thing in Gingerbread that I was super excited about. They did this thing where you're going to have a streaming app where you will be able to listen to any DRM-free music in your iTunes or Windows Media Library straight from your phone. Like,
I love that.
You'll be able to just pull it, and it'll use Wi-Fi to connect both your PC and your phone to each other over the internet, which means any 3G connection is fair game for you to stream your entire music collection onto your phone.
Yeah, I really like this because it basically punks Apple. It basically punks Apple. You don't need to actually hard sync to iTunes to be able to use iTunes on your Android phone.
Yeah.
And they can't break it. They can't break it.
Yeah, exactly. And oh man. Like, I mean, I'm looking forward to Froyo just now, but now it's like, now I want Gingerbread.
It scares me from the music perspective or the DRM perspective is like, how are they going to get away with that? Like, someone's going to be pissed off.
Well, if it's your library and you've purchased it.
One would think that it should be yours to do with it as you please.
It's like a Slingbox, kind of.
Yeah.
But if it's streaming and you're not hard downloading it to your phone, I could see where, because you're not necessarily making a copy of it.
Yeah.
You're just streaming it from your library.
I still would never want to do it over my 3G connection, but that probably has more to do with this than anything.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want to do it on that phone. It'd probably explode.
You know what? This is a great phone, and I've used it for years. Yeah. I just bought a new battery for $11.
Wow.
That's pretty sweet.
That's really special.
It's kind of a big deal. Big moment in my life.
All right, well, let's move on again. We got a lot to cover because of oh, yes, your phone explode. I'm a strong bad fan. Anyway, Google TV finally gets announced as well.
Yes.
I'm going to go over really quick stuff with you guys, and then we'll just talk about it real quick. Google TV made its debut yesterday at I/O. Android powered, so we get to talk about how awesome it is here on the show. Let's go through bullet points. Starts right up in your TV, not in an interface. It'll change channels, access your DVR, and your cable satellite company's channel guide since it works with your current box. Your own remote will work, or you can pick up one Google offer, or you can use your Android phone, which is super awesome.
Sweet.
It'll work with existing TVs. Exactly. It'll work with existing TVs. The hardware will include a TV set, Blu-ray players, companion set boxes, all kinds of stuff. You can navigate with your Android phone. Since Android supports voice, that was one of the other things I saw at I/O that I loved, which was he's like, can you point me to the direction of the nearest hospital? And it translated it into French and spoke it out of the phone. I was like, Oh, wow. Like Google Translate is like
Universal
so
Translator.
amazing.
Star Trek, it's coming true.
I know, yeah.
All
Like,
of
no,
it.
we're starting to get into the Jetsons. I constantly ask this question, like, why aren't we living the Jetsons? But now I feel like we're kind of getting there.
Are.
Like, they just announced yesterday, like, I know this is sort of off topic, but they just announced yesterday that they created synthetic life.
Yeah, I
Did you
saw
see that?
I did see
No.
that, yeah.
Yeah, like,
I thought you were
this is
gonna
like a
say
huge
traveling
deal.
in tubes, but
Yeah, I
awesome.
wish,
Yeah.
traveling in tubes.
want
But they created
transportation.
synthetic life, which
That's
is
all I want.
I did
amazing.
hear about that.
It's okay, so back to Google TV.
Yes.
Third-party developers will also be able to make remote apps. So we'll be able to see what developers come up with, which again, biggest point of Android, open source. Built off Android 2.1, but it'll upgrade. Uses Google Chrome, supports Flash 10.1. You'll be able to use Android apps on it as well, but not at launch. And the demo was amazing because it was such a seamless transition back and forth from TV to internet.
Aside from the whole keyboard not working.
So yeah,
issue.
aside from the whole, we need to use the second box, we need to
turn
switch
off
to the
your
first
phones.
box, we need to go, yeah.
your cell phones,
Well,
please.
poor, yeah, he was like, please turn off your cell
Yeah,
phones, like
for-
all the
Why would
nerds
you
with
use a
4 cell
wireless
phones
keyboard?
each.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that didn't seem like the best
Anyways,
choice,
yeah.
but yeah, I definitely, yes, I'm still waiting for a conveyor belt to my car too, just so everybody knows. And it's available this fall. So you're going to be able to go out to Best Buy. Best Buy's CEO is, of course, on the stage to say, you can buy it here at Best Buy. And you can go this fall and get yourself Google TV compatible products. I believe Logitech is making the set-top box. But there'll also be Sony TVs with it built in. So amazing stuff. Really amazing. And you'll be able to watch This Week in Android on your Google TV. Like,
right.
I mean, I know you can do it now with like if you have an HDMI out and all that stuff, and you can switch from your computer, but you don't need to with Google Television.
Exactly.
Here's what I want to know. Can you build your own set-top box out of a computer? Like,
That's
you know
a really
how
good question.
you can set up Boxy or XB, what is it, Xbox Media Center or whatever. But can you build like a Google TV box? Because I would love to be able to do that. Just put tuners in there.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't know what the
I hope so. I
hardware's
mean, it's
like.
open source.
Probably.
It's open
It's
source,
open
right?
source, so I would imagine
Is it
so.
open source?
That's what they said, right?
Well, it runs
I
on
don't
Android.
remember. It does. Well, it runs on Android. That doesn't
Which is
necessarily
open
mean
source.
that the application itself is.
Somebody will do it. Somebody will
Somebody
hack
will figure
it.
it out.
Somebody will figure it
It may
out.
very well be. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure.
Might be you.
No, I
It
don't.
will
I
do,
don't
like,
do
it
the
will
coding.
not be me.
I piggyback off others' work. That's,
It's easier that way.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about the next couple of things shortly because I really want to get to our interview because I think it's going to be really cool. Google is closing its online phone store. They're going to sell all of their Nexi ones. I don't want to say Nexuses.
Yeah.
That just doesn't sound right. They're Nexi ones in stores. So unfortunate. I mean, it kind of makes me sad.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, because now you're stuck with a provider when you buy a phone. Which, granted, you're stuck with a provider if you want to use your phone, but it's nice at least being able to buy it in the clear.
From a third party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were ahead of their time, and they also didn't have places where people could touch the phones. Those were the two problems, I think.
Right.
It's a great idea.
We talked about that. We talk about that every couple
Yeah.
times. I mean, I want to be able to go into a store and touch a phone and feel it. But if there's a better deal online, I want to get it online.
Yeah.
I saw the Nexus One for the first time in my life the other day. A guy just had it randomly, and I was so excited. I scared him. I was like, "Excuse me."
It's like a
He's like,
leprechaun.
What?
You're like, hey,
Yeah.
if I hold one of those, it'll give me a wish.
But it was so amazing. I had never seen it. It's so thin and awesome looking, but I didn't know that even from clicking on the websites all the time.
Yeah. Well, you
There's something
can't.
different to
You
like
can't
being
imagine the
able to-
scale of something
Yeah.
until you see it in somebody's hand, like in person.
What do you think? 2 years Google Store?
Ooh, that'd
2
be
years?
sweet.
Year and a half?
That would be sweet.
I think a couple years. I think it'll change, but I don't think it was the right time.
Yeah.
People weren't ready
Thinking-
to buy their smartphones from Google. But I think once Android with Google TV and everything, it's
But
gonna.
they're never going to make hardware. Like, that's the way they're able to lure all these hardware manufacturers. They promise them. Like, one of the guys, was it Sony? He's like, it's rare in this business when we have no fear of another company, but we have no fear of Google. And I was wondering why he said that. And I was thinking, maybe they promised them that they would never make hardware. So how would you open a store?
I wouldn't believe it if they did say that.
I was gonna
but
say,
still.
yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
I
I mean,
believe
maybe
that.
behind closed doors they said, look, we're not gonna
Yeah.
make our own TVs. We're gonna use yours with our software.
That's
Right.
definitely what they're doing at the moment. That's a
So
good
how would
point,
they
though.
open up a store though? Would it just be other people's stuff?
Probably. I don't
Well,
know.
they already are doing. This is our next news story. Kindle for Android is coming to the Android market soon, and so I think that once they start their app market that they sort of showed off at I/O with the really cool over the cloud syncing integration, all that stuff. I really think that it's going to change. And I think that the Google market is going to become a place where you not only can buy apps or web apps or whatever else it is, TV shows for your Google TV, it's going to turn into books, obviously, like iBooks is, and it's going to be things like a Nexus One or whatever hardware it is that they want to partner with somebody to sell. And then it just, you know, it already is set up on your Google, you know, merchant account, and then you just, it gets shipped out to your house. So
I can see that.
The one caveat with the Kindle for Android was I guess you have to go to the mobile website, purchase the books, and then sync it with your app.
Right.
And then it'll download it to there. So there's no like in-app book purchase thing.
Purchase.
And then it's only for Kindle books. It doesn't play like open formats of books.
But there was a thing last week that we didn't get to where it's I think, well, Barnes and Noble's launching it for Nook, but it's called like something Pub, and it's
EPUB, right?
I think it's EPUB, where it's independent publishers can publish their own books. So I mean,
Sounds right.
there's going to be a lot of garbage out there about vampires. Let's all get real here. Yeah, and werewolves. But I really think that ultimately, like, the cream will rise to the top. Like, they're the good
let's hope.
everything. Okay, so let's really, really briefly, if anybody has a Hero finally upgraded to Eclair just in time for 2.2 to get announced and for them to be behind once again. The Droid Incredible, they're talking about how it's still selling out everywhere, still doing amazing.
I had a friend who tried to buy one like 2 weeks ago, and he's still waiting.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
He's about to cancel his thing. He
And
tried to get a hold of Verizon. It's not been well.
And now,
It's
if you ordered it, it's going to release on the same day as the Evo
As the Evo,
4G.
yep.
Yeah, so they're
That's
saying
really
a lot
bad
of
news.
people are just saying, forget it, I'm just going to move. Because my contract's up, so I'm out.
Missed the boat on that one.
You know what's awesome with the Evo 4G? You can talk and do data at the same time.
As long as you
That's pretty
are
cool.
on
The 4G.
the 4G,
Yeah.
not 3G and data. So, but yeah, 100,000 units sold a week. And also, I would just like to throw out a huge congratulations to Google, because they did announce at I.O. that they're activating over 100,000 devices a day, which is huge. I mean, really huge. Like, amazing. And like unbelievable numbers for them.
They said activating, not shipping? Like
Activating,
activating?
yeah.
Like,
Activating, users activating Android devices
Wow.
every day, 100,000. I mean,
Yeah, cool.
amazing. So, you know, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's across all Android devices across the world. I mean, everywhere. So, yeah, I am frightened by it too, but in a good way.
yes.
All right. Well, we do not have a graphic for our. It's not an app. So, but our interview this week is with David Wang, who is also known as Planet Being, and who's also known as that guy who ported Android to an iPhone. So, David, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, Michael was telling us this morning that you officially dropped your. Go ahead and tell everyone.
Dropped your iPhone 3G Android port today, right?
Oh yeah, like yesterday, I uploaded binaries for it.
Nice. Nice. Congratulations.
Thanks. The source code's actually been up for a few days, but I actually managed to package everything up and write a how-to for it. So
Nice.
that's what happened.
Yeah, I just think that pretty much everybody who is familiar with Android and who is into tech is they basically fell out of their chair when they saw an iPhone 2G running on Android, which was just crazy. And now you've basically ported it to the 3G, and we've got we've got you here talking to you about like basically accomplishing something that most geeks only dream of. Including myself. So tell us a little bit about the decision to port Android to the iPhone. I mean, what made you decide to do this?
Well, I mean, originally the project wasn't to port Android specifically. In fact, when it started, which was sometime in 2008, Android wasn't even out yet, so or the source code wasn't officially released. So it was actually to port Linux. And as you know, porting Linux to everything is sort of like the geek Mount Everest. And you want to do it because it's there. And at the time, I already had been doing a lot of work on the iPhone. I'm part of the iPhone dev team, and we do a lot of jailbreaking and network unlocks. And I was already exploiting vulnerabilities on the iPhone at the bootloader level, which is right on the bare metal of the iPhone. So I had a little bit of background. And when you port Linux to something, you're pretty much demonstrating a complete ownership of the device, like I would say. Most of us buy devices, and we have no idea how or why they work. And to me, that's not a level of ownership that I find completely satisfactory. So when I port Linux to something, it demonstrates that I understand pretty much every single bit of what the device is doing when I'm using it. I certainly didn't understand the iPhone completely when I started, but in the process of creating this port, I've gained that understanding. And actually the same thing is true for Linux. When I started to port, I didn't really understand how the Linux kernel worked very well, and now I have at least a rudimentary understanding. When Android actually came out, when Google actually released the source code for Android, it was sort of a no-brainer to do the same thing, to use Android as the user land. You guys probably already know that Android uses for a kernel a modified Linux kernel. But to be honest, like the modifications that Google has done for Android to the Linux kernel aren't that big of a deal. So basically, you have almost a stock Linux kernel under every Android, Android device. It's important to know that the only piece of software on a computer that interacts with the hardware is the kernel. So once you ported the Linux kernel over to a new piece of hardware, the Android port of this onto that piece of hardware isn't such a huge deal. So it was pretty much obvious from the beginning that Android was the right user land or non-kernel portion of the operating system for the iPhone Linux project.
Very cool. Were you the only person that did this, or did you have help accomplishing this?
Well, I mean, I'm probably responsible for 95% of the code that is on the device right now, but I did have some help. One of the iPhone dev team members, whose name is his nickname is CPICH. He did a lot of reverse engineering for me, like to help out, like little jobs here and there. I would ask him to do something while I work on something else. There's another person called the Seven. It's sort of weird to say these nicknames out loud, but
that's all right. I consider it the same thing as like talking about my friends in World of Warcraft. I'm like, oh yeah, Akiram did this, and then everyone's like, Akiram, what? Like, and I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry, it's an in-game name. Don't immediately, don't listen to me, please. Yeah,
exactly. I don't usually talk about these names like out loud very much.
Hey, yeah, you type them more than you speak them out loud, right?
Exactly. And well, he did a lot of what's called a flash translation layer. It's a really, really complicated bit of code, and he actually helped out enormously with that. And pretty much now that I had a release, a lot of people are actually contributing. So, right now I still own about 95% of the code, but I'm really happy to see that's changing. So.
Very cool. And how long did it take you from start to finish to port Android onto, how long did it take you from start to finish just to the 2G iPhone?
Well, okay, so I looked at my commit logs, which is, a log of every time I upload the code to the internet. The first commit happened in May of 2008, which is, as you know, it's now May of 2010, so that's 2 years ago. But I haven't been continuously working on a project. I've only made commits in 8 of those months in those 2 years. So probably it took me around 8 months of my spare time. So.
Okay, how much longer did it take you to do the 3G port?
The 3G port only took a couple of weeks, despite the little details and packaging. So yeah, it was a lot shorter because the iPhone and the iPhone 3G and an iPod Touch are nearly identical in the hardware bits. The iPhone 3G only had a newer multi-touch interface and a newer sound codec. So, and all of them use the same what's called a system on a chip that's manufactured by Samsung. The first generation iPod Touch and iPhone and iPhone 3G all uses what's called a Samsung S5L 8900. So they all use that. The rest of the ports are going to be harder because none of the other iPhones and iPods use the S5L 8900. They use a slightly different system on the chips. So.
Okay, so it's going to be a while before we see a 3GS port?
Yeah, like the iPod Touch second generation uses what's called a S5L 8720, and the 3GS uses an S5L 8920. So these are obviously very closely related chips, but they are different in very nitpicky ways. So it might be a while before we figure it out, but there's no way to tell for sure until we looked at it more. So it might actually be pretty easy. I'm not sure yet.
Well, you have to keep us posted on your journey to porting it to 3GS, because I think there's some people out there who'd be really interested in that.
Oh, I mean, I'm really interested in it too, because the 3GS is actually my primary phone. Unfortunately, I don't have an Android phone, but it's actually my primary phone, and I would love to be able to run both the iPhone OS and Android on it.
Yeah, we've had,
cool.
I think we've had more than a couple people mention that they would love to be able to dual boot. Yeah, dual
silly.
boot's the big goal.
Yeah. I have some
Go
questions.
ahead.
What are the main parts of the software that you have to actually write? Are they just drivers that you mainly have to do in order to get the port working, or is it something else in the kernel?
That's basically in the Linux kernel. What's required is, well, there's two main pieces that's required. First, you need a piece of code to start the Linux kernel, to get the pre-boot environment set up. That would be OpenIBoot, which I wrote. And also, inside the Linux kernel, you need to tell it where the memory is, like which part of the address space is actually the memory, and then you need to tell it the drivers. And, not only the drivers for the multi-touch, but the drivers for very, very basic things like the I2C bus, the I2S bus, the DMA controllers, and stuff like that.
Did most of those drivers already exist, or did you have to write those?
No, I had to write everything.
Okay, that's what I figured. That's rough.
That is impressive.
It's pretty impressive, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Michael, you're right.
I have a quick question. Is it running 1.6 or 2.1?
1.6. We have running 2.1 is just a question of using a different root file system, because you barely. I mean, the kernel right now is the latest kernel. Is essentially the 2.1 kernel. But unfortunately, since there's no 3D graphics acceleration, 2.1 is very, very, very slow. I mean, I'm excited to hear about 2.2 being significantly faster than 2.1, so maybe we'll have better luck with it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Do you have plans to eventually like optimize it to take more advantage of the hardware on the iPhone 3G and 3GS and stuff?
Yeah, right now it's running debug code, and like the worst part of it is probably the kind of hacky implementation of the NAND flash that I have. So right now it's really laggy when you try to start a program because it's reading from flash. Things like that can really be optimized. And the good news is that you don't really need to do any reverse engineering for it. It's basically, people who know C, hacking on it. So
one last thing, I triple dog dare you to port iPhone OS to Droid.
Just saying. Droid.
I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I don't have a Droid, but maybe there's someone.
But so you have to donate one.
Yeah.
Maybe you can use your.
Just putting it out there.
Maybe you could use your G1 there.
Yeah, you can use my G1. You can have it. And actually, I don't need it anymore.
Once you get your Evo, you won't need it.
That's right.
You'll be able to just hand it out.
We can dream.
So one of the questions that somebody was mentioning was there anything that you were surprised by during porting? Like while you were trying to port, was there anything that you were surprised by, or anything that was sort of a hurdle for you while doing this?
Well, it depends. Do you mean in terms of figuring out how the iPhone works, or in terms of actually moving that knowledge into Android? And
moving that knowledge, I think, into Android. Like, was there anything that you were like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to go that way, or I wasn't expecting this to be as difficult as it is, or as easy as it is?
Well, it is actually a bit of a. The thing is that I thought that once I reverse engineered the Apple stuff, the iPhone stuff, I would be able to find documentation and lots of help moving that knowledge inside the Linux kernel and then booting Android onto it. And unfortunately, that's not really the case. The documentation for porting Linux to new hardware and to port Android to new hardware is actually very scarce and inconsistent and not very good. And I actually heard from a Debian and Linux developer named Matthew Garrett that I was actually one of the two entities that managed to develop a halfway working Android OS on a new piece of hardware without Google stepping in, and it's me and Barnes & Noble, apparently. So.
Very nice. Wow, that's really impressive. That is really impressive. A lot of people in our chat are saying, continue the great work. I mean, really, just, keep doing what you're doing. Do you think that you'll actually, like when Android releases tablets, do you think that you'll actually try to port Android to an iPad tablet at some point?
Oh, certainly. I mean, it would actually be really great to have Android on a tablet, I think. But, the problem is that there's so many different devices out there, and what I want to do the most is to actually, focus on getting these Android running very stably on these devices. And I want people to. I don't want it to be just like a gee whiz, this is so cool type of thing. I want people to be actually able to use Android on their iPhones on a day-to-day device, and we're not quite there yet. So I want to sort of work on that first.
Very cool. What's your favorite app on Android and why?
Well, given that I don't actually own an Android device and I can't get the Google Marketplace on it, that's actually a pretty tough question.
All right, I'll let you have that one.
I'll say the web browser. The web browser is really nice. I like it even better than Safari, actually, because Safari, I often find myself, swiping and scrolling through large portions of text, and it's really difficult where you have this sort of where you can zoom out on the Android web browser and go to a specific portion really easily. I really like that feature, actually.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have any questions? I always feel like I always dominate this question and answer segment.
Prepared.
Yeah.
So my other question is, what in terms of, because you do iPhone development, and I'm sure Jeff is over here just like, you feel sick.
iPhone, yeah.
It's just like, iPhone. In terms of developing and porting things to the iPhone like you've been doing, what do you think is capable what do you think the iPhone and Android, in terms of the future, do you think that we're going to see more openness in terms of Apple, especially with Google? I know it's like, haha, that's so funny, but I'm really curious about what you think might happen in the future in terms of Google has been so transparent, not necessarily, I mean, they're a corporation, so there's still a very solid level of non-transparency, but they've been a lot more open than Apple has been, especially in the mobile market. And I'm just wondering that if, by way of all of this openness that we're seeing, if Apple will respond in kind and maybe release things that in the future, I mean, if they start seeing all the numbers that we've been seeing, which is 100,000 new activations a day, they start seeing the numbers and say, gosh, well, maybe we should open this up a little bit more to developers. Do you think that'll ever happen?
Well, I don't know. I would love for it to happen, but just given the personality and current strategy of Apple, it is very unlikely. I only see things getting more and more locked down. I only see things. I only see them using a business strategy that tries to shut out, their whole, that controversy over Adobe Flash. That just indicates them that they want developers to develop only for the iPhone and not for any other platforms. And as long as that strategy works for them, they're not going to change.
Yeah.
So.
It really seems like they're starting to not take hostages. That seems really extreme, but
Kinda.
But it feels like that. They're taking developers hostage and saying, develop for us and that's it, because you don't get an opportunity to spend the time to develop something for another engine or another OS. Yeah. It just seems seems counterproductive.
But it's working is the sad part.
Yeah, well, and AT&T,
it'll probably work for a while.
Yeah, but see, I'm wondering how long that can last. I feel like it can't last that long. You guys out there know. I mean, how long can it really last for them to be so closed to the development community and still really,
Well, I think a good sort of thing to reference with is just the Windows Mac Linux operating system battle, because Windows has had they're pretty closed, and they're still been successful for a significant amount of
That's
time.
true.
It's just because they had such a large market share. That said, however, they had like a 98% market share, or 95 or something like that, whereas iPhone's only got, what, 50% or something around that?
That's right.
So
40 to
it's
50.
a little bit less than that because there's other
I think
stuff
it's like
in there.
46 or
Yeah.
something.
So that's a significantly lower starting point than
That's true.
Microsoft had.
But the way Microsoft got so ubiquitous is because they didn't actually make any of the hardware. They never made their own hardware, so it
Right.
was
That's
it was
true,
open
yeah.
in a
See,
sense
and
that you
that's the
could have
thing-
a lot of different
That's
Right,
true, yeah.
hardware
and that's
options.
why my desktop at home is a PC, because I can open it, I can upgrade it, I can put in whatever I want into it, you know, or I can build it exactly the way I want it to be built. And so I can't imagine Apple going much longer. Like, I'm talking about years. I mean, like, I'm talking less than a decade. I mean, before people, the development community especially, starts to say, well, you know what, this is not worth the hassle.
Yeah.
Like, at what point is it not worth the hassle? I guess that's a question to ask you. Like, at what point do you think developers for the mobile space, start to say, well, all of this secrecy and all of this lockdown is not worth the hassle?
I guess we'll have to ask the developers. There will be a point when there's enough Android devices out there that people are going to say, I'm not going to develop for the iPhone, I'm going to develop for Android because there's more of my customers there. At
That's
that
true.
point,
Pretty much it, yeah.
Market
Yeah.
saturation. Like, they say, hey, there's more people who are going to buy my app on Android, I'm just going to go develop for that anyway.
Yep.
right.
I think as long as Apple has sort of the edge on the innovation curve, as long as they still seem like they're innovating and kind of leading the pack, it'll
be
be able
okay.
to work for them to a certain extent. But I don't think that having a closed system like that, which actually shuts out innovation, they'll really be able to stay ahead of the curve, especially when you have all these things that Android's thrown at it with
Yeah.
tethering and with multitasking.
Curious to see what their new phone looks like, but
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Evo.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the Evo is going to
It's
the crap
a
out of
beast.
the existing iPhones.
Well,
So,
yeah, and it's just even you know, even looking at a phone like the Incredible, which is not quite the Evo, but it's close, and the Nexus
Pretty awesome.
one.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all phones that are, you know, to me and to probably all of us, like, hands down better than an iPhone.
Yeah.
Now, it's not necessarily pick up and use like the iPhone is. It's extremely user accessible, but I just think that over time, I just can't see it lasting that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this has been an interesting discussion, David. Like, thank you, thank you for indulging us.
sure.
Do you think you're gonna get to work right away when iPhone 4 comes out? You're gonna get Froyo on there?
Oh, well, I don't know. It depends on you know what I need to like look at the hardware and stuff first, but I hope to.
I think a lot of people really look forward to that because a lot of people really love the form factor in Apple, and I'll be the first one to admit. I mean, their stuff
yeah.
is very pretty. I mean, this is very nice.
I think a lot of people are also lazy because, I mean, you have all these Android devices, or you can just go with the iPhone, and there's a really clear upgrade path for the iPhone. I think
that's
that's
true.
probably
That's true.
part
Yeah.
of why.
So
Yeah.
people don't want choice to a certain extent, right? It's almost like choice overload.
That definitely
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on the show. Like, people just have so many choices. So, where can we get more information about the port? How can we donate to your cause? Like, I want people giving you money. I want them throwing cash at you left and right. Tell us
Oh, me
how
too.
we can find you on the internet and donate to what you're doing.
Well, you can visit my blog, which is, you know, I'm going to update with the latest news about what I'm doing and what other people are doing on the project at linuxoniphone.blogspot.com. You know, you can also, my PayPal donate link is there. You can also visit iDroidproject.org, and there's a really developing community there that are, you know, hacking the stuff that I'm developing with some stuff that I haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, so just check out both websites.
Very, very cool. And you can find, if you want to go check out David online, you can go to, as he said, you can go to linuxoniphone.blogspot.com?
.com, yeah.
.com. And you can also find him on Twitter at PlanetBeing. David, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today, talking with us about your port. I mean, I think it's really amazing that the things that you're doing, and I think I speak for everybody.
Yep. It's pretty sweet.
Really, really
for coming.
impressive stuff. So
Awesome.
thanks so much for putting in all that hard work and really, you know, that's just I was so excited to have you on the show. When I got your email, I was just like, yes, I really wanted to talk to this guy. So thank you. I really appreciate having you on, and I'm sure at some point we'll have you back on when you have successfully port Froyo over to iPhone 4.
Oh, definitely.
Thanks for being on the show. Bye.
Yeah,
Well, that was pretty cool.
that was pretty cool.
Really, really neat.
That was probably our nerdiest guest so far.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking that too. I'm like, you know what? This is probably going to be pretty dense for some of for some of our viewers who are just here to just check out, what's the app of the week? Like, I want to see what I can download to my phone, but
Man.
But we gotta give credit where credit's due. I mean, that's some amazing stuff that's
pretty
going
cool.
on the show. So.
I often wonder why iPhone developers who are like, yeah, I want to know everything about the iPhone. I want to unlock it. I want to put Android on it. Why aren't more of the hackers, because there's such a huge hacking community for iPhone, like even bigger than Android. And Android's is like, I know, because I have to hack this thing to be able to still use it.
Right.
It's really big, but it's even bigger on iPhone. I wonder why more people don't just say, I'm just going to go with Android.
Yeah. Well, and that's
If you want to
right.
hack it for some of the same features.
Yeah, well, there's there's different learning curves. You have to start back at 0.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, not 0, but,
But I
you
think
start
it's
back
like
at
Linux.
Well, I think it's like you said,
Well,
though. It's
I don't
like the
think
Mount
iPhone's not Linux.
Everest. Like, you do it because it's there. You do it for the challenge, and you do it because it's there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I like that. Like, I like just I'm going to do this because this is like probably one of the most difficult parts you can possibly do.
Yeah.
Like, and then he just did it. Like, which is great. He spent the time and did it.
2 years. That's ridiculous. That's, oh my gosh, that's so much work.
From start to finish. I mean, yeah.
He started when Android came out, and he just came out with the
crazy.
one for the 3G. That's a lot of work.
Very, very crazy. So really briefly, I just want to bring up to everybody that if you're on AT&T and your contract is going to come up anytime in the near future, be afraid, because if you have a smartphone and you upgrade, they have doubled the early termination fee for smartphones to $325, which is probably the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous.
Especially, well, you know what it is. They're like, oh, when you come here, we just want to like basically force you into staying, and so that once you realize what a terrible network you're on, you can't leave.
Pretty soon you'll be signing up for years of indentured servitude.
Yeah, well, at least
right,
it's not
that's right.
still. At least it's not as bad as Canada, where it's 3 years. Your contract's for 3
yeah.
years,
Wow.
which is crazy. So, but yeah, just so everyone knows, I mean, I know the Galaxy. Like, if you're looking at getting a Samsung Galaxy when it comes out, which is a very nice phone, think about it. Like, I just want you to really know that you love that phone, and you love AT&T, which not very many people can say that.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to throw that out there for you. Well, that's the end of our show. Like how it went
good.
by so quick.
That was a good one.
I know, it's already over. I know. Can you believe it? So, first off, we would love to thank profusely David Wang, blogger, hobbyist hacker, on Twitter, Planet Being. Thank you for all the hard work that you do. Thank you for coming on the show today. We really enjoyed having you. As always, Jeff, it's a pleasure.
I made it.
Tell the nice people how they can find you on Twitter.
At Jeff Ammons, one word.
It's really creative.
I know.
And then also Michael Ludden, thank you so much for being our guest on the show today.
My pleasure.
And thanks, good questions.
Yeah.
Really fantastic.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how can we find you on Twitter?
Michael_Ludden, Ludden on Twitter.
Very cool. And you have plenty of hilarious, amusing
Yes.
YouTube videos.
Weird, sometimes weird, be warned.
A little
Feel
bit
free
weird.
to follow me and
a
you
little
will be
off.
entertained.
And you can find me, Ashley Esqueda, on Twitter at my handle, AndroidAshley. If you are an app developer, if you are an app company, if you are a hardware company, if you're a carrier and you want to sponsor This Week in Android, I'm not going to say I'm going to beg, because that would be beneath me, but come sponsor the show. Like, we have a lot of fun, and we would love to promote your product. Like, I really am dying to do like old-timey commercials, like from radio.
Awesome.
So
Can I
like,
bring in like a mustache? That
yes,
week?
you can have you absolutely can have a Snidely Whiplash mustache, and
Probably
actually
grow one in a week.
Probably
Exactly.
could. I just need like a few weeks.
one
a couple
week.
days.
Yeah, let me know.
You just need to sleep on it. That's it. I'll sleep on it and have it. It'll be great. Yeah, if you're interested, you can always drop us a line at thisweekend.com. And we have other shows. So come check out our shows on thisweekend.com. We've got This Week in iPad, This Week in Cloud Computing, which is becoming huge. This Week in Venture Capital. This Week in Startups. This Week in YouTube. This Week in Twitter. I mean, we've got every kind of imaginable tech thing. And if we don't, we will in the future, because we are expanding and it's going to be great. That has been
Wait,
this.
don't forget the most important one.
What?
Oh.
Kevin
Oh.
Pollak chat show.
You're right.
I always forget that one.
I know. I always have it like right there at the end, so it doesn't say this weekend.
Yeah, I know.
So I always miss it.
I know.
But yeah, Kevin Pollak's chat show Sundays at 3.
Yeah.
Streamy award winning.
Streaming award winning.
Whoa.
Very fantastic.
Whoa.
Yeah, and he's great. The interviews he gets, he's had like Kevin Smith on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and he's had so many really cool guests. I'd like to thank AndroidandMe.com for our news, our preferred news source. There's some of my favorite people over there.
Yep.
So, and you weren't here
stuff.
last week for that, but yeah, like I love them dearly. Next week we're gonna go back to our app of the week, and we've got a good app next week. And if you're into fitness, definitely come back and check it out. As for us, that's been This Week in Android. Have a great week.